are the women on this committee?
Your time is up.
Is it because senators like y'all got us pushed out?
Please sit down.
Well, that's one of the former sister senators there, Penry Gustafson, a Republican who was voted out of office for taking a hard stance against a highly restrictive abortion plan while she was still in office. She was one of many speaking against a very controversial plan this past week that the State House that would ban nearly all abortions in this state, would hit doctors and even mothers with criminal charges for being part of an abortion. So many are now saying no way to this when it was debated for hours at the State House this past week. That is where we begin this week on Connect to the Capitol on this Sunday morning. Thank you for joining us. Of course, we got our friends Dave Wilson, Catherine Glenn Foster, who are also in the U.S. Capitol. So we got two capitals here, the one over my shoulder and the one over theirs. We got
a little bit different than that one there.
That's the one.
The one that's shut down.
Yes, the one that's shut, but you're not. You are still working. You are still working, the two of you. And that's what's at issue here. We talked about this last week, this outrageously restrictive plan when it comes to abortions in South Carolina. There was a lot of testimony, and the majority of it was, hey, why are we even doing this?
You know, back earlier this week, we saw hour after hour of testimony on, as you called it, an extremely restrictive abortion bill. We did discuss it last week, hit on some of the different elements of it that would be perhaps most concerning. For me, number one has got to be that fact that this bill opens the door to actual prosecution of a woman who sought an abortion outside of very limited circumstances. So that is unprecedented. It goes against all of our nation's history, even as we've seen bills restricting, limiting, banning abortion get passed. The mother has always been viewed by the state and by pro-lifers as a second victim, as she's termed in this legislation. Not so with this bill. And so that is why we saw so many people, so many organizations, even such a broad spectrum come out against it. Even traditionally more pro-life groups who typically would have actually supported such a ban, when they saw that the woman was at risk for prosecution, they said, no way, this is way too far. We're going to pull any kind of support.
You take a look at the fact that South Carolina Citizens for Life, Palmetto Family Council, and other pro-life groups who tend to be the ones that you hear from more often, they were absolutely against this bill because of the criminalization. But Catherine, there was a group of, I'll call it evangelical pastors, who came in very strong stance, often took strong stances against the senator, saying, if you don't pass this, then you're going to hell, which is honestly one of those places where there's a place for faith, there's a place for religion, but there's also a place for formal and appropriate discourse in a situation like this.
Right. There's really no call for that or any of the other really more aggressive rhetoric that we heard at this hearing. Really disturbing. And one of the key things, no matter what you believe on an issue or necessarily how you came to get there on any particular issue, you don't necessarily bring that into the hearing. You can talk about your personal story if you have a direct connection, if there's a reason there why you might believe it, whatever that might be, whether it's on homelessness or drug abuse or whatever it is. But that just went a bridge too far. And especially when you're talking about senators going to hell.
Right. And the other part about this, and this was the part that was honestly so concerning when we were watching the hearing going on. First of all, 400 plus people lined up. It started in the afternoon and it went well into the evening with just a short break in between. And they really let just about everybody who wanted to talk, which I think was part of what they were setting out to do. I think we're going to have a hearing. We're going to allow people to discuss it. Whether it goes anywhere or not is a completely different thing, because in conversations that we've had with senators over this past week, there are very few, especially on the Republican side, who are saying, sure, I can get behind this bill. There are about 5, 6, maybe 7 of them, but the rest of them absolutely appalled at the fact that it would even be going this far.
And frankly, on the Democratic side as well, we
Right.
didn't exactly see support, to be clear. And so that's exactly right. And so for me, I think about the bigger picture. And so I think one of the key reasons to even have this hearing, to take this testimony, is just to let folks express themselves, get their opinions out, and just be able to say, yes, we heard you, we're listening, we're taking what you say under advisement, but this would be a terrible bill for the state of South Carolina, including and perhaps especially for the women of South Carolina.
I mean, you have to keep in mind too, we had 2 rounds of the heartbeat law.
Mm-hmm.
The one that was passed in 21, it was passed again in 23 after the change in the state Supreme Court.
That's right.
So when you look back at this, the issue of abortion has been part of debate at the South Carolina State House for the better part of the last decade. There's rarely been a session where abortion has not been a topic, and it has kind of waned a lot of support from folks who would have typically said, I'll be for this. But again, this bill does a lot of criminalization issues that really, for many people, take it 1 to a dozen steps too far.
Compelled testimony, we can go on from there. And while it does still contain those protections for the life and physical health of the mother, that's it. That's as far as it goes.
So we'll have to keep you updated as if the bill moves along. They did not take any vote on it, Brian. And I think that's one of the things to keep in mind here is that they took testimony.
They did.
But they didn't take a vote yet. Could medical affairs come back in later and take a vote in full committee? We'll have to see what happens when the subcommittee, if they actually do take a vote, does take one.
Possible, but unlikely.
Yeah, we remember a similar situation almost a year ago with another version of this where, again, it was a day of testimony, hundreds of people, and nothing ever came of it. Never saw the light of day.
That's exactly right.
And so come January, when the session gets going again, I'm erring on the side of we don't see this again. That's where I am, and I think you might be too.
We can pull that little piece of paper out that we
keep
keep
the one that you have in the desk behind me here. I'll write it down.
For those of you at home,
I'll write it down. What do you want me to write on it?
Little bets on what we think is actually going to be happening.
That's right.
Gambling.
Not that we're gambling on a Sunday morning in South Carolina.
No, we're just making a record. We're making a record.
Exactly.
To see who was right and who was wrong. So
I think we're all right on this one.
I think we are too. It was just a listening session, I think, at the State House this week. Mm-hmm. And if the people that were there certainly want to get that out of the way and make sure it is just a listening session, because they will rally against this with everything they got inside of them. Good first segment here on Connect to the Capitol. When we come back, a very divisive issue, all linked to just a shocking murder case in the city of Columbia that is now getting a heck of a platform here when it comes to a political football, and that's the killing of Logan Federico. We're going to look at that when we come back.
She was 5'3". She weighed 115 pounds. Bang! Dead.
When they say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it's broke.
There's fury about a broken system this week. It is a case that really has rocked this region. The shooting death of 22-year-old Logan Federico, a North Carolina woman, stirring a passionate demand for change. She was killed in Columbia back in May while visiting friends. Now, her father's testimony this week up in North Carolina about victims' rights, adding fuel to a lot of fires here in South Carolina where the terrible crime played out. That's the man right there, Alexander Dickey, accused in this case. Alan Wilson coming forward saying, pursue the death penalty. That's his challenge to Fifth Circuit Solicitor Byron Gibson. Yes. But when it comes to Byron Gibson, we have candidates for governor now coming out of the woodwork. Congressman Ralph Norman, Congresswoman Nancy Mace saying lawmakers draft articles of impeachment against this solicitor. They don't like the way the case is being handled. Gibson says, now, wait a minute. We have a career criminal here. Yes, he had some 40 charges against him, 25 of them felonies. Most of them, though, didn't happen in this jurisdiction or during Gibson's time in office. But this case here has become something. Pamela Evatt on Friday also coming out and saying judicial reform, top priority. We talk about crime and punishment on this show all the time. This case meets the criteria for sure.
So this case, it started off as a criminal case. Tragic, absolutely heartbreaking. We should never have lost this young life of this young 22-year-old girl who just dreamed of being a teacher. With that said, we also have to look at when something expands beyond the simple criminal justice system, where it absolutely needs to go and stay, but expands into something greater, something that's much more political. And that's exactly where we are right now with this case. As you mentioned, we have candidates for governor weighing in, other leading political figures, and it really has expanded into something even beyond. You're right, there were 48 indictments, charges against this young man. None of them violent crimes. And he did serve 4.5 years in prison. And so there's a debate going on right now. What is the point of our criminal justice system? The father there, Logan's father, he called for justifiable vengeance. So some people look at it as vengeance based. Others say, well, let's take a step back. We've all fallen short. So let's look at a rehabilitation-based system where we can hopefully, instead of too often teaching these young people, these people in prison, more about how to commit crime more effectively, why don't we try to reshape them and point them in a positive direction? And so clearly that did not work here, but what kinds of signs were there during his previous 3 times in prison? Could this have been prevented?
And so the point of the rehabilitative nature of prisons and the incarceration system in South Carolina is something that has been fairly well talked about. I mean, we have a recidivism rate that is the lowest in the nation, which that means that we have fewer people going back to prison than in other states.
And fewer people committing more crimes, we should say.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so when we look at this type of issue, though, you've got 2 different factors that are playing in here. One, a tragic death of heartbroken parents. But let's be honest, it happens every day in the state of South Carolina. This one is getting a greater level of viewpoint from it. The other part of it is this. Number 2, the level of response to this, we all saw portions of what happened with Charlie Kirk. And you see Erica Kirk, his widow's response to that. You had the Mormon church that was shot up just last weekend. 9 people died. The Mormon church is actually taking up $60,000 to support the family of the shooter. When we look at those types of factors, those are the heart side of this. But this is connected to the Capitol. It's a political talk show. So let's talk the politics real quick. The only person right now who can make a decision about how a case is going to be prosecuted is one of 2 people, Catherine. It's either the elected prosecutor for that district or the attorney general.
That's right.
Where does the governor play into any of this? The governor has absolutely no say in this whatsoever. We don't have a governor that selects judges, certainly doesn't select solicitors. So welcome to the game of politics now when it comes to people running for governor.
That's exactly right. And, as you said, not every crime, not every murder even receives this level of attention. This one is, for a number of factors, certainly parents heartbroken and speaking out, but also because of the timing in this political cycle and the fact that a lot of these different moments, different crimes even go viral, and so many candidates are now speaking out on this directly as part of their campaign, proving they hope to be tough on crime.
So this is a place where let's talk about some of the issues that were being brought up, Brian. You talked about judicial reform. Mm-hmm. You talk about sentencing reform. You talk about laws that need to be passed. Well, the legislature can pass laws. The legislature can look at some form of sentencing reform, but the gubernatorial candidates who are coming in right now and saying, listen, we need to change the way that we select judges. I don't see how this factors in necessarily with what this case is.
That's right. And even beyond that, of all of the different issues, political issues that could impact this case, that could have prevented this horrific crime, the number one on my list would be prison reform, because 4.5 years served and continuing to go back out there and continue to commit crime. So the recidivism rate here was it was high.
Right.
But I mean, he did. He went right back to the life of crime and to jail. And so what do we need to be doing differently? Really going back to what Erica Kirk said. We had discussed previously a couple of shows ago about how I knew Charlie Kirk personally. And his widow just was so powerful at his memorial service when she said that she forgave the young man who shot him.
But at the same time,
calling for justice.
The justice, what happens in the place of forgiveness versus the place of justice, those are two very different sides. You can have forgiveness, but justice could still be executed through here.
Sure.
Even to the point of execution.
This one's not going away. We're going to hear this one on the campaign trail for sure as we continue on in the months to come. Speaking of campaigns, when we come back, we're unveiling a new segment. Dave calls it the Ad Watch. We have one for you when it comes to one of the candidates for governor. That's when we come back on Connect to the Capitol.
What kind of Republican gets rich from DEI? Ask Pamela Evett. She lined her pockets by teaching corporations how to impose DEI policies on South Carolina workers. Pamela Evett's HR firm bragged online that pushing diversity makes companies look more progressive. She even coached CEOs.
Well, we're debuting a new segment this week called the Ad Watch. This one launched earlier in the week. You clearly see it's an attack on Pam Evett, the Lieutenant Governor, characterizing her as the DEI queen of South Carolina. Dave, this was your brainchild, this ad segment. So, what say you about this particular ad? We're going to have one every week.
Let's look at, so as you begin to watch these ads play themselves out over the next, oh my word, how many, 9, 12 months that we have left in this cycle, you're going to be seeing ads that are going to be coming out that some of them you got to ask the question, is the claim true? Is the claim not true? Do we have something in here that is just so outrageous that you sit there and go, that's just a step too far? In this particular case, Pam Evett did have an HR company that she ran. She was participating in some levels of HR work that needed to be done, talking about how do you bring diversity into the workforce. So in that particular case, you have that. But the way that it got painted, especially with the choice of graphics and colors and everything else, I find it very interesting, and we're just going to break it down real quick. There's a lot of rainbow in the design that goes along with this particular ad, and funny fonts and everything else, and it really is a ridicule ad. They're trying to, I think, visually trying to pair her with DEI. They're trying to pair her with a LGBTQ agenda, which goes completely against what she has been standing for. And you pop the crown on her head, and it just seems to be an absolute mockery. But at the same time, you have to ask the question, did she actually push forward on DEI?
The other question here is not just, is it factually true, but what are the underlying assumptions behind the ad? What is this ad trying to communicate to you, the viewer, about DEI, about LGBTQ, about all these other things? It's almost as if they're trying to pair being a Republican or considering voting for the lieutenant governor as endorsing those things, and that those things must de facto be bad, when I think it's taking the thought process out of it and just trying to connect with you in a negative way.
Yeah, and we saw it was similar to an ad that we talked about last week, where we had an ad that was put together by a group who is favorable, I think, to the lieutenant governor, who also included portions of television ads from Governor McMaster's run in 2016, and the same thing for the president in 2016. And so as we go through and as these new ads come out, we'll be doing an ad watch on them so that you can know at home what's real, what's not, what's actually a part of this, and be able to at least interpret. The other interesting factor that's playing into this right now is for those of you who are watching us on television, thanks for getting up on a Sunday morning. For those of you who are watching online, more and more folks are beginning to watch online. Mm-hmm. So these ads are appearing there. But this particular ad was pushed out in a text message, most likely to core Republican voters. So they're bypassing a traditional way of getting media out there, and they're doing a direct hit in 30 seconds or less coming to your phone.
That's right. And so they probably have the data to indicate that this is a group of voters that would be more likely to be naturally against things like DEI. But nonetheless, kind of bypassing that whole question, what do you believe? And if you listen to the Jermaine Johnson interview, Representative Johnson from last week, a good counterpoint to that.
Right. So if you haven't had a chance to catch that extended version of our conversation with Jermaine Johnson, then please go on to WACH.com and look for Connect to the Capitol, because all of the Connect to the Capitol episodes and our extras are available on there. And as we break down more ads, if we have more time to break them down with you, we'll be adding them there as well.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this segment. When we come back, though, we're looking at your voter data and who might have access to it, and a little bit of fun as we close out this week on Connect to the Capitol. Welcome back to Connect to the Capitol. We talked about the firing of Clemson, a professor, a little over a week ago for some social media comments about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Well, now the ACLU of South Carolina suing Clemson University over the firing of that professor due to the post on social media. We talked a lot about this in the last couple of weeks, Dave and Catherine. This has opened up a can of worms, this particular
no surprise here at all.
Discussion.
That's right. Yeah, this is exactly what we expected to see. Lawsuit after lawsuit. We talked about how American citizens don't stop being citizens just because they're employed by the government, whether that means that they're employed as a postal delivery person or by a college, a university, a public school. There may be some limits, some restrictions that may be put on, but when you're talking about going onto someone's personal, private social media, things that they're posting on their own time that are not disrupting the classroom directly, then that is a very high bar to meet, because the court is going to be weighing the employee's free speech, the professor here, versus the school's interest in maintaining a safe learning environment. And here, where there isn't a real safety issue, always go back, think about shouting fire in a crowded theater. Where that isn't the case, then you have an extremely high bar to meet.
And that is what we said 2 or 3 weeks ago to be expecting. There will be lawsuits. People have been fired. The first lawsuit we discussed was the teacher in Spartanburg County, a teacher's assistant in Spartanburg County, whose comments really were nothing in any way wrong or vulgar. She simply stated that
maybe we should have less gun violence in America.
And I don't think anybody would disagree with that particular. But I think the thing that we have to start taking into account here is First Amendment rights are First Amendment rights. And if you don't like those, well, that's part of being American. I mean, we're here in our nation's capital right now. And when we start thinking about our constitutional rights, you actually have a right to not particularly like something, not particularly like someone's viewpoint. You can vocally discuss that, just like you can have your freedom of religion, a redress of grievances to your government, the right to bear arms, and so many other protections that we have in our Constitution. And I think that's the important part here.
Right. The First Amendment is exactly there for this reason. It's there so that we can express views that others may disagree with, may even find reprehensible. We can still express those views. So we can look for an exciting court battle ahead and the ACLU to most likely prevail.
All right, quickly when we get out of here, I want to quickly mention a Richland County Court this week determining that the South Carolina Election Commission can work with the DOJ on trying to get 3.3 million people's voter data. That's a quick hitter right there, so that's going on. But Dave, we got it. Well, we're going to call a kicker. Russell Fry. We got about 25 seconds left here.
So government shutting down in
so you show that to us,
DC here, but the social media team at Russell Fry's office, I don't think you could get any more, what's the term I want to use here? Junior in your art.
That was somebody's child that made that social media post. There you go. Because everyone else is furloughed. The professional is furloughed.
Yeah.
And that's what you get on a Sunday in South Carolina.
That's right. So we ended on a high note. Dave, Catherine, do something about getting those people working up there again.
We need to. The lights are starting. If you haven't noticed, the lights are starting to turn off. So,
yeah, they are. They're going to. The bills need to be paid. All right, that's going to do it. Dave, Catherine, thank you so much, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next Sunday on Connect to the Capitol.